on the new conference call, one thing that I mentioned that really like made it click for me of how the system works and how Tesla makes it better is like, so now you can go through an intersection, right? Which you've been playing around with yourself,
Right.
like city, street, stop and go. But you have to confirm to go through that intersection. I think they were doing like 1 million intersections already, or 1 million at whatever pace. But then eventually, so like every confirmation that the human inputs is like training the AI in real time. So they're leveraging this fleet of like their 1 million cars to like train it every time. And just the way that they're like push it out into the wild and then have the humans perfect the algorithm is such a like it blows my mind. And I love that Elon was ranting about how it's like Google kind of, and how when you type in a search into Google, you're training it, how you turn the wheel on the Tesla, you're training it. And it just seems like no car company has this system in place. Like, you know, like who's developing this vertical approach where like you have the 1 million people, you have the two-way data connectivity. You know, without that flywheel, it just doesn't seem like you will actually make any headway on truly solving this problem.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Tesla is really breaking ground on a completely new way of developing software. And this is really what Andrej Karpathy came in from OpenAI to do. And what they're really capitalizing on is the rise of deep learning. So a really interesting thing started happening around 2000. There's certain software problems that are just so hard that people haven't been able to tackle them. Like, for example, when you're writing code, you're typically giving a computer a list of steps. So if I'm writing a piece of code to calculate a tip, I might say, take the amount you spent on dinner, multiply it by 20% or whatever tip you want to give. That's the tip, right? So I'm giving the computer a really rigid set of instructions it needs to follow, and it just follows them exactly. But what if I want to tell the computer, okay, can you find photos of Gali, right? That's really hard. Like, it's, I could try and code it like, okay, look for glasses and, but it's really hard to find a list of steps for how do you recognize Gali, considering you could be wearing all kinds of different clothes, you could be shaven or unshaven, right? So Facebook had a breakthrough on recognizing people. And the reason they were able to have a breakthrough on recognizing people is because people were just uploading billions of photos to Facebook. And every time they uploaded a photo, they would tag their friends, right? And it turned out that rather than writing a rigid set of instructions, you could basically just show the computer all the photos of people and the tags, which are called labels in deep learning speak. And you say, here's a bunch of photos of Gali and here's a bunch of photos of other people. And you show it to the computer, and it creates this neural network data structure, a data structure that's designed to mimic the brain. And it initializes kind of the mapping. Kind of think of it as like, okay, here's a photo and here's kind of like the representation of like what Gali is. So you look at all these photos and you try and like distill that representation down and use some like complex math where basically you start with a random mapping and then you keep showing it new photos. And every time you show it a new photo, you try and tweak the network a little bit to optimize the loss function or decrease the amount of times it's getting the answer wrong. So you keep spinning this training wheel over and over, processing all this data through it. And eventually somehow this data structure comes to like have a representation of what Gali is. And what you found is that Facebook was actually able to create an algorithm that can recognize people better than any human, right? Wow. So when they showed actual humans photos, okay, recognize this person, the computer was actually able to score better than an actual human. So this shows you the power of big data. And Tesla then said, and it's not an advancement in software. It's not a revolutionary new algorithm. It's an advancement in data. And having all that data then allowed Tesla to say, okay, let's tackle trying to actually drive the car using learning. And and Tesla has a huge team of labelers actually labeling this stuff by hand, but they also use the driving data to label. So every time you have to confirm on the update that the light's green and that it's safe to go, there's no pedestrians crossing, so that you don't run anyone over. So the computer compares its answers against the human's answers. And Tesla's able to laser in on exactly where the software is not doing what the human would do and fix it faster than anyone else can.
Wow. And there's so much that goes into this, like this 8-camera situation, because Tesla's doing that vision-based approach. Like they have to actually build that hardware into the cars to be able to collect that data. There's kind of the theory of like the Trojan horse. Like Elon just wants to get as many Teslas on the road as possible, because even though you're paying for them, you're also giving them these data to make their software better. And in many ways, that software, like robo-taxi autonomous driver, is truly the entire value of Tesla. And everything they're doing now is just to build that driving AI.
If they can pull off autonomy, it completely transforms their business model. Every analyst's model of how to value this company breaks. And you know, every analyst's model of how to value the auto industry breaks, and the whole world economy really changes. So the key to that is really the data.
Yeah. And I love what Elon said. I think he actually replied to one of my tweets before this in Autonomy Day, which was like the structural change that analysts can't wrap their head around. Okay, a car, you sell it for 20% gross margin, maybe a couple percentage of that goes to the bottom line. But now it's like, no, the value of that car that can drive itself is like 5 to 10x what the value was before it could drive itself. And so to me, in many ways, when I look at like what that step change in value is for the vehicle and how it's basically all just that software algorithm, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much, you know, there's so much value in this technology that Tesla's building. You think about how they can equip it to trucks, have trucks drive autonomously in the future. Like your Cybertruck, we don't have to park near our homes because our car can go, like it's going to change so much about the game.